Welcome back to College 101. Today is my second video about being a transfer student. Again, this was on request of someone I talked to on Reddit about the subject. And so if you end up watching this, this is for you. Thank you for connecting with me and helping me get ideas for what college students are curious about. If any of you have ideas for future videos, questions you have or had that you wish you would have an answer for, let me know in the comments so I can try and make content and give you my best experience and opinions. So, choosing to transfer is a big decision, and oftentimes it's very emotionally motivated. You feel off, you feel homesick, you feel lonely, you feel bad in your classes, you feel like maybe you don't know what to do. Those are all feelings that happen to a lot of college students. For me, I felt like I didn't relate to a lot of my peers at University of Oklahoma. Nothing against the college, nothing against the people there. I had great friends, made great friends, but overall, it just didn't feel like the right fit. So before your friends or your family try and talk you out of it and tell you how bad it is, I want to give you some questions to ask yourself and things to consider so that you can make an informed decision and step back a little bit from that emotion, but also acknowledge the emotional response and maybe figure out why it's happening and how you can make your next college choice the best one. The first consideration I'm going to go over is financial. As you know on this channel, I want you to be very conscious of your finances because college can be so expensive and it's a massive decision for your life. Transferring schools only complicates things. The reason I say this is because if you transfer schools, you probably aren't eligible for any scholarships. Nobody loves transfer students. As well, transferring might take some additional years of schooling, whether it's because their programs have different requirements than yours or they just won't accept your transfer credit, especially if you're going across state lines, then you may have to retake things that will take you an extra semester or an extra year. This is important because my goal is for you to enjoy the college experience, learn everything you can, do all the things you want to do, but also get out of there as quick as you can because it's so expensive. And if you found the career you want to be in, why not get to it, right? So if you're going to be adding extra schooling, that's definitely something to consider, but not a disqualifier. For me, going to BYU would have added an extra semester to a year. Because I took a semester off to go work, it was only an extra semester of classes, but I did graduate an entire year later. I graduated in April of 2020 instead of April of 2019, like I would have at University of Oklahoma. And lastly, if you're transferring to a college that's out of state while you were in state before, there's going to be a huge tuition differential. I'm going to be making some videos about the exact numbers, but out of state tuition is usually at least twice as expensive as in-state tuition, if not more. So those are all the financial considerations to put in place that you can take a look at. For me, I knew that going to BYU had a cheaper sticker price. I was losing the scholarships I had, so my first semester I had to pay everything out of pocket. But I also felt confident that if I worked hard, connected with people, and did my best, I would be able to get back some of those scholarships. The second consideration to make is all about your career path or your major. Hopefully, if you're switching colleges, you already have some idea of what you want to major in, because that will help direct you as to which colleges might be a good fit for you. It will be important for you to consider how their program is and what you want to major in. It could be that it's a good school, but they might be really lousy at one particular thing, or at least not as good as some other options. Especially if you're transferring after 2 or 3 years, you're going to be spending most of your time in your major courses and with your major professors, so that's really where your focus can and should be when you're thinking about transferring. For me, I knew that BYU had a research professor who I was very interested in his work, and I went and worked in his lab. And so I knew that the curriculum would be similar and that even the interests and research of the professors would be in line with what I wanted. As far as national ranking, they were fairly similar. They were both good engineering schools, but chemical engineering wasn't like their top engineering program, just a solid foundational engineering program. As well, you can look at the emphases and company connections. So for example, if I had stayed at University of Oklahoma, they had a lot of connections within the oil and gas industry, whereas BYU had a few. I ended up using one of them. But also, BYU had lots of other things that they were developing as well, whereas OU was mostly oil and gas, petroleum type focused, as well as biomedical focused because of their medical school. in my limited experience there. Keep in mind, I was only there for 2 semesters. The last consideration when it comes to your major is if you're guaranteed to get in. At some schools, especially highly ranked schools, there's a lot of applicants who might want to get into the business school or the mechanical engineering program or the illustration program or any of these things. And so if you don't know if you're going to make it into that program, be wary about making a big change that could cost you a lot of money just for you to not get to do what you want to do. The next consideration has to do with you personally. For me, I had to really evaluate why I went to college, and you need to do the same. For me, my goals were to get a degree, get a good paying, stable job, meet some diverse people and have a few diverse experiences, and hopefully date people who want to get married or even meet my spouse. At University of Oklahoma, I felt like several of those goals weren't going to be met, or at least weren't the main focus of all the other students around me. So even though University of Oklahoma definitely could have gotten the job done on paper, I wouldn't have been as comfortable or enjoyed it as much as I did going to BYU. Like I talked about in my last video, which you should definitely check out, there is comfort in being with people who are like you and agree with you. Your college education should challenge your thinking and your perspectives, so you don't necessarily need every single person around you to be vastly different and disagree with you. The last question to ask yourself when you're making these decisions is what makes you think it will be any better for you? And this is where knowing your concerns really helps, because if your concern is that you're lonely, maybe you need to go to a smaller school where there's a closer community. Or maybe you need to go to a bigger school where there's going to be more people who like maybe the sort of niche specific things that you like that a smaller college might not have access to. Maybe if you're homesick, you need to move to a college closer to home or way further than home. Both cases can work for you because if you're like an hour away, you're constantly thinking about them, but it's too far to go to every day. If you go to a college right in your hometown, then you can even live at home if you want to. Whereas if you go to a college 16 hours away, then you can only go home for the holidays, and so that will hopefully help you be more immersed. Those are just a couple examples of identifying your concern and trying to find a solution that will make sure that your college is the best fit for you. Ultimately, one of the best resources for me when I was looking at transferring colleges is talking to people who went there. My dad went there, albeit 35 years ago. My brother and sister went there, and lots of people I had met on my mission either went there or were going there. So even though I made the decision before my mission, I was continuing to gather data and make sure it was the right experience. Because even after I came back, I could have gone back to the University of Oklahoma instead. Ultimately, this is a gut feel decision, and lots of you might be making this in your first semester, just like I did. But looking at it in hindsight, I realized that part of it was a maturity issue. As an 18-year-old at college for the first time with different kinds of people, I was a little shy and a little averse to the diversity. So I went somewhere where I was more comfortable. Looking back on it, if I had stayed at University of Oklahoma, I definitely still would have met a lot of good people, had a lot of great experiences, but maybe wouldn't have had everything. I definitely wouldn't have met my wife because she was going to school in Utah. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to keep in touch with some of the friends I'd made through my gap year experience. In the end, I wish you the best of luck in this decision. I hope that you are able to answer these questions about financial, professional, and personal goals to help you make a clearer decision that will be right for you the second time around. There's nothing wrong with making that change as long as you make an informed decision with the correct expectations. I'm confident that you will be happy in your new decision. If any of you have transfer student experience or know the reasons why you're thinking or did transfer, share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them, and you can also help out everybody else here on the College Guide. Thanks for watching this episode of College 101 here on the College Guide. We'll see you next time.